I haven't had an answer like that before, and I love it because
that's the kind of important insights that it really help you when you're new and wanting to do some things, but have the right expectations as you make those steps.
and you just lose a lot of that momentum that you waste in the very beginning.
So the minute we launched it, it has just been, we were seeing bookings really, really quick come in there, and it's been really nicely booked.
I want to talk about some of the challenges on that road, but also some of the things you've come to maybe not like as much, or you didn't realize you were getting into with the short-term rental.
This has been really great for people who didn't really know what they were doing. And if we knew what we were doing, maybe it would be even greater.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore. We're back with our Experts Corner interviews with successful short-term rental investors. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Miss Julie McLeod. Julie, thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited to talk about your journey into short-term rental investing.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Super excited. I love these conversations. I know our listeners love these conversations, kind of talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. And like before we hit recording, I was telling you, make sure that we talk about the challenges and the things that don't go right in short-term rental investing, because a lot of times people learn a lot about that. And our goal is to help people walk into this game with their eyes wide open. But I always like to start with the backstory. What's the background? What pays the bills? What got you interested in investing and ultimately investing in short-term rentals?
Yeah, good question. So we kind of stumbled into it, honestly. We decided we wanted a retirement place, and so we were looking around in Colorado and found a place that we really liked. But we are not. We're several more years before we retire. So we thought, well, we'll try renting it out. It had been a short-term rental when we purchased it. So we thought we'd kind of keep it going, see if it, how it did. And it was quite successful. And so as we were stumbling through this, we decided we probably should learn a little bit more about this. Like this has been really great for people who didn't really know what they were doing. And if we knew what we were doing, maybe it would be even greater. And so that's really how we started, was just we thought we would just do it for a few years. I think we'll talk in a little bit about that's really shifted for us. And a lot of that is because that first experience combined with the course that you offer, Shawn, and the way that the community that we have gotten to know through Vodyssey has really kind of helped us to shape it into something that's really exciting for us. So.
Yeah, that's so let's dive into that. You mentioned it's Colorado. Where are you guys from? Colorado? Is that your home base as well? Like, where are you guys from?
No, we're in Texas. Okay. And Colorado's always been kind of a special place. So when we were younger, both of our families lived there for a little period of time. We traveled there and climbed up Mount Massive and got engaged on the summit of Mount Massive. So it's kind of always been a place that we enjoy going, and so wanted to have a kind of a home base there. Is why we were looking.
Yeah, that's fun. And I'm always curious on how people choose their areas, what they what gets them into it. As many times, like in your guys' case, it's kind of, we buy it for one reason, and then those things kind of change. We realize, oh man, there might be a little potential into this, right? When I got into it in 2006, I had no intentions. I didn't even know what short-term rentals were. We bought a vacation home. Like my wife and I, we just bought a vacation home, and ultimately had to start renting it on the weekends, and because of financial problems that we were having. And I was using classified ads and local classifieds and Craigslist, and then started realizing, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's some potential. It sounds like that's a little bit about what you guys did.
Very similar. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. We didn't have to use classified ads, but
we accelerated. There's a few more tools out there now, right? 2006 Airbnb wasn't even around, so we didn't have any of that. So what is the time frame? When did you guys buy the first one?
We bought it in 2022.
Okay.
The very
kind of the end of the bubble then. you know,
Mm-hmm.
sort of,
Mm-hmm.
that's when things, that post-COVID bubble that it happened, and that spike in everybody knowing what short-term rentals were and everybody using them, and having one was like having toilet paper. Everybody made money, and you're right. It
Right.
was like, so you're kind of, and then in end of 2022, 2023, things started to say, okay, the wave's going out a little bit, not the dollars being spent. The demand was still there, but there was a lot more supply, right? There was a lot more competition, and we had to start doing things a little bit different. And so you walked into it, had some success, and the
Mm-hmm.
light bulb started going off. And talk to me a little bit about how the property goals changed. And was it right out of the gate, or is that just kind of we're starting to change things now? Like, or at first, were you saying, okay, maybe like you mentioned, we're doing okay not knowing what we're doing. Maybe we could do really good knowing what we're doing, and navigating those types of decisions.
Right. And that's kind of so after probably about 6 months, it was like, wait a minute, there's more here than just renting it out for a few years, and there's some real potential, and thinking more broadly as we diversify our own portfolios, and so that's when I started thinking, yes, there's a lot of supply, and so how do we compete in that market, and how do we just make sure that we are doing what we feel like we need to do, to make it as successful as we can. And that's one of the things, I looked at, a lot of folks who could offer master classes
Yeah.
and things like that, and spoke to a few of them. But I really loved the idea of getting your unfair share of the market. Honestly, I thought that was it's like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that kind of attracted us to you, to say, I think here is a way for us to think about what we have in a different way than how we have been thinking about it. And so that's been, so now we've been on this journey for a little while, and we've been with you for a little over a year now, and it's been, man, we have, when I look back at where we started and where we are now, it's been a pretty incredible 15 months, I guess, something like that. Yeah.
Walk me through that 15 months. So you got into it and you weren't really stumbling. You were just saying, hey, I think that there's some potential here. And like you said, you kind of resonated that unfair share of business, right? Let's go get our unfair share of that business at the top of these markets. Like, how are we going to do that? And what does that even mean? And, I always tell people this, the road is not always paved in gold, and it's not always sunny every single day. Right. And so tell me some of the things that I want to talk about, some of the challenges on that road, but also some of the things you've come to maybe not like as much, or you didn't realize you were getting into with the short-term rental, game, as you started to play it and really starting to say, hey, we're going to be intentional about playing it at a high level.
Yeah, it's so really playing it at a high level, I think, is so much more involved than just throwing up an Airbnb listing or something, right? And so, starting out, I think we knew there was more to it, but the depth of that has been eye-opening, really, to think about all the ways that you have to have your property, your experience, and then how you can find folks who who aren't just on Airbnb looking, but other ways to get in front of people and things like that. So, I mean, we still feel like we're learning a ton every day. It's been so our first thought was, we want to optimize the property that we have, right? And one of the things that was interesting for us, and we really appreciated, is that there's a lot of resources to think about what that looks like. And also, our property is really unusual because it's in a pretty small town, but it's a large property. So we get lots of family reunions or a yoga retreat or different things like that, big groups. And and so there wasn't some of the ways that in more saturated markets to look at our property and to know, okay, if we invest this, we're going to get it back in return and different things like that. And especially as we were looking at it as novices. So when we started asking a couple of questions, it was really great that you reached out and said, let's just jump on a call. And so you really kind of walked us through, like, for your property, this is what we would, I see, this is what I think you can do, that kind of thing. That felt really personalized for us. Especially when we were kind of an oddball situation, if you were. And then so then there's this, because it's a larger property, a lot of times people are booking way in advance, right? There's a lot to do to optimize it, right? So we're kind of taking it in chunks, if you will. And the first chunk happened this past summer, and that's because that's time when we can be up there for a little bit of an extended period of time to do some of the things or manage and supervise some of the things that need to be done to the property, things like that. So we're really starting to see the benefits of that, which has been fantastic. We have quite a few repeat groups that come in, and our property manager sends us great little feedback from them, or you see it on the Airbnb review of, oh my goodness, you told us this was updated, but wow, and it's like, yay, we did something great, right? So it's been a process, and I would say there's still things on our list for that property that we want to do. Just that you just can't get it all done at once. And so it's a journey, really. I always try to explain to people, it's a process, not an event, right? This is something you're going to be doing over time. And I love that you brought up the fact that you said, hey, listen, we've got this, this amazing asset that we invested in, that we bought, that we're paying for. And part of getting your unfair share of business is figuring out how to maximize that asset. And we look and say, okay, I want to maximize what I have before I move to property number 2, for example. And especially on a big property, because you might be doing it in phases, right? We might do, you got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I think that, that's what I think you had, maybe 3 phases when we talked about it, on that you had kind of planned out on, here's what we're going to do to really maximize this. And and you do that for different reasons: budget, time, seasonality, different things. I mean, you're in a beautiful setting, but you happen to be in the mountains. And so this time of year, there's a lot of snow around, and it becomes more difficult. Contractors are harder to get up there, different things, right? Exactly. Right.
And so all of those things factor into the phases that you're going to be, layer, like, ideally it would be nice to just do it all at once, but sometimes that's not always the case. And you also had the challenge of, it wasn't just like, okay, pull a whole bunch of data. We've got so much data that we can look at, and we have really good comfort level within the, on, if we do this, we're probably going to get this lift. If we do this, here's probably where we're going to be at. And you guys didn't have as much data to look at. And when we looked at that property and laid it out and said, okay, here's what we're seeing. Here's what we think we could do. But you were already at the top of the market, but there was still potential to make more, right? And sometimes those are hard decisions to make on your own.
Very much so, especially as a novice. And so we felt so much better after our conversation. And one of the things that's unique as well with the larger properties where they book out in advance is, like, we did a bunch of things over the summer, invested some money, kind of created an experience, and yet there was quite a few bookings under the old pricing structure, right? Yes. And so one of the things you talked to us about is, you have to be able to be willing to say, I'm going to invest this, and maybe it's going to be 6-9 months, a year before you really start seeing that coming in, which is fine with us. But that's the kind of important insights that it really help you when you're new and wanting to do some things, but but have the right expectations as you make those steps. So.
Yeah. Have you, has it been far enough removed at this stage? Are you getting to that stage where you're seeing some of the fruits of that labor? Are you noticing that, okay, we're now we are moving the needle when it comes to booking rates and everything else at this stage in the game?
Yes. So the property manager pretty much immediately put in new rates, right? But some things had been booked already.
Yeah.
At the old rates. And so, but yes, we're getting good bookings coming in at the new rates and feeling like, this is okay. This is really great. And you talk about that turning point when it's like hard, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Ooh, this is fun." And so we're kind of starting to get some tastes of that, and so that's exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the hardest. I don't want to say the hardest sell, but it's the hardest thing to get somebody to like understand or believe in the very beginning. On the first property you're experiencing this is saying, hey, listen, this is we buy property number one and we're in that grind and we launch it. And even when we start making some money with the property, it's hard to like really visualize what that turning point looks like because we've never felt it or experienced it before. Right. And so we're like, okay, Shawn's talking about this turning point, and I always talk about turning points with properties in that 12 to 18 month mark, but I also turning points with portfolios, usually around that 3 to 4 property mark, where you're like, okay, if I just take these first properties and I think, okay, I'm never going to get there with 5 or 6 properties, but then when that turning point hits, you're like, oh, now I see it. Now I realize it. It sounds like on property number one, you're starting to hit that turning point, and you're saying, okay, maybe I kind of understand this, and it gets a little bit fun, right? And then we start thinking about property number two, right? Immediately, it feels like, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so walk me through that.
Yeah. So once we kind of started going through some of the trainings, we really liked the way you sort of started with, what are your goals? What are your, and so as we sort of talked through some of those things, we decided, hey, if this really can work, like we kind of are seeing, and like all of you folks are talking about, then we think having a portfolio of 5 properties is probably good for us. It doesn't have to be our only source of income and retirement, and yet it's a way to diversify and have some other kinds of income coming in, different income streams from different kinds of things. So 5 is our goal, 5 properties to have. And so we bought our second one, and it's in Central Texas in the Hill Country, in a great location. Also one that is sentimental to us. So both of our properties so far have been those places that are meaningful for us, that we want to go.
Yeah.
That lifestyle asset that you talk about, right? It's some place that we want to take our friends and our family and go enjoy and visit. And so that one it's the cutest little house. And we, kind of had some things we knew we needed to do to it before we turned it and put it on onto Airbnb and things like that. But also a few surprises that we didn't really know would be so impactful. So we knew we needed, for example, I'll just get specific. We needed a new roof on the. It had been added to over time. Each time, I think they did a worse job with the roof and with the pitch and all of that. And you could just see the different roofs on the house, right? So we knew it needed a new roof. What we didn't know when we purchased it is that there was a lot of work that needed to happen to really create the kinds of planes on the roof that would support the house being properly protected like a roof does. And then how long it would take us to get that through engineering reports and, all the contractors and. So instead of a month to 6 weeks turn to get a roof put on, it was about 3.5 or 4 months before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Yeah. So we were kind of like, we're ready. Let's go. Let's go. And so just some of those things that you learn along the way, and not everything is going to be just as you plan it. And yet, the second it started renting out, there was times my husband was saying, let's just, put it on the market, even with the bad roof that's on it. And then once we're ready and we have all the engineers and then we'll take it off the market for a month, get the new roof put on or whatever, and then go back. And so our property manager in this location and I kept saying, I really think we have to wait and really launch it in the way we want it. Right.
Yeah.
And so the minute we launched it, it has just been, we were seeing bookings really, really quick come in there, and it's been really nicely booked for us. It's one of those, we have a few things we want to do on it with some things outside, and then a little bit of maybe an update on the bathroom inside and some things like that. So there's still some things on our list there as well, but it is going quite well as is. So.
That's awesome. And it's it's an interesting, because this one we're talking about is in Fredericksburg. And I have, I've had multiple people tell me, and this happens in a lot of different markets, but Fredericksburg is one of them, is, oh, you can't make any money in Fredericksburg anymore. The prices are too high and this and that and the other. And it seems like no matter when somebody says that, we have somebody that just absolutely proves them wrong and says, no, you can if you do things right. And I think it was a huge decision to wait to launch. You know that I'm a big proponent of launching when you are ready and fully optimized, not launch partially to get some money coming in and coming out. But also that's where, that's why we always say have 6 to 9 months of property expenses, or either in reserves and or the disposable income to pay that mortgage in the meantime. Because if you have that, it makes the decision to wait and launch fully optimized easier because your back's not against the wall, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so being able to do that when you're planning on, a few weeks for a roof, and it takes 3 to 4 months for a roof before you get done, it allows you to make those decisions. But it also, that is one major decision you made that allowed you to launch way more successfully than you probably would have if you would have launched, taken it off, and then tried to relaunch again. And you just lose a lot of that momentum that you waste in the very beginning.
Right. Exactly. I think there's, again, kind of like on the larger, our Colorado property, I would have loved to have had all the money in the world to do the cowboy pool in the back and updated bathroom and all of that at the same time. And we just, made some decisions to do that one in kind of some chunks as well. And I think, what I think it'll do is it'll help to continue with some momentum with the property. Like, we're looking at doing some of the updates here this spring. And so then that'll be another great way to see some additional attention from, it'll come up in some different parameters when they're being searched on Airbnb, things like that.
What are one of the questions we get all the time now that you've kind of experienced both sides of it is huge properties, 9-bedroom property versus a little smaller property, like the 4-bedroom property. Do you have a preference on one or the other? Because like you mentioned, the big property books out further in advance. It typically you're dealing with large groups. A lot of times those large groups repeat. Those can be really good things, right? Because they're a little bit more predictable, but also you're not picking up a lot of last minute bookings on a 9-bedroom property, right? And so do you have a preference? I mean, I know there's pros and cons of each, but having both of them now, what would you like? Do you guys lean toward one or the other? Because it's a common question we get of people saying, should I buy a big property or a small property?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm not sure I've got it fully figured out, if you will. There's a lot I like about a big property. The things that you've been talking about. And it is like anything you do is so much more
Way
expensive
more
because you're
expensive.
doing it
Yes.
times 9 or whatever for the 9 bedrooms and all of that. So we, this past summer, one of the things we did was a lot of updates in the furnishings and the decor inside and that kind of thing, which was substantially more money than when we did that on our little place in Fredericksburg, But I do like having kind of on that hospitality side, having the a place that really can bring a lot of people together.
Yeah.
We're really close with our family on both sides, and so that kind of experience when we all get together is phenomenal. And when we've gone places that and rented a house, it's been so great to have all of us under one roof, right? So being able to provide that for other people, some of the people who've come to visit is like a large family came to uh, the patriarch was basically had a terminal
Illness.
condition. Yeah. And so this was their goodbye, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to provide a space for somebody to do that with their family meant a lot.
Yes. Pretty special. Yeah.
And then some of it may be market driven too. And this is probably where you would jump in more than me. But I feel like, one of the things like in Fredericksburg is that location close to Main Street is a really big deal. People want to just kind of walk down to Main rather than try to drive and park and things like that. And so those houses right around Maine, though, are not 9-bedroom houses, right? They are generally quite small. So some of it maybe has some market aspects as well. As we're looking at our third property, I'm kind of leaning back towards a larger property again. So that may be kind of one of my biases is to go for the larger properties. But
yeah. And I love the way you answered that because one, there's not a right answer, right? There's not a wrong answer. They all work really, really well. Sometimes it's market driven, but what's driven for you guys is how you travel, right? You travel with your family and you enjoy that. And you, like you said, and so you have you're kind of gravitating toward more of the larger properties because of how you guys travel and the way that you guys spend time together. I don't travel with big groups typically. I'm typically traveling with my small little family. And so I typically lean toward the smaller properties. But it's based on how I travel. You're exactly right. There are markets that are going to drive you one direction or another. Just like you said, in Fredericksburg, people want to be by Main Street. They want to walk to Main Street. Those are the top performing properties, and they're typical small little cottage bungalows, right? That are built, a long time ago. They're older properties, right? There's not a lot of new builds down there, and so that's if you're going to operate toward the top of the market, it's a different experience, but that's also not a big family reunion type place, if you will. That's you're going to have, smaller families, adults going in, they're going to do the wineries and they're going to do some of that stuff and have some fun doing that stuff. It's just a little bit different. And so, but it's interesting because you're right. They both have pros and cons. Like you can go in and deck out a small 2 or 3 bedroom for a fraction of the cost that you can deck out a 9 or 10 bedroom. Right. And,
right. Exactly.
But there's, there's also going to be, there's places for both is kind of the point. And I think the way you answered it was perfect is when you're trying to analyze it together, you're saying, I probably, listening to you, it's like probably lean toward the big ones because that's how you guys travel. You enjoy bringing the whole family together. It's pretty fun.
Anytime we can. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. And that's where we always start, right? There's got to be some investability. There's got to be numbers behind anything. We've got to make decisions, as much as we can on the investor side and making sure that we're looking at the numbers, making sure the potential's there and all those different things. But I always get a lot of grief for just, starting with kind of the emotional side of it as an investor. They're like, you got to remove all of that. You just got to look at the numbers. And I've never believed that to be truly the case because we're kind of in the emotional business because we're in the experience business. And we should understand that type of experience we are providing for our guests. And that's a perfect example of one of the decisions we make based on that. So,
And
Julie,
I've always really enjoyed the way you talk about that emotional side and the lifestyle assets. These should be places that you want to go and that
yeah,
you want to experience. And I think that that's another piece that sort of drew me to your way of looking at all of this. So I like that personally.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think that I think it's a way that allows us to go actually get our unfair share of business that you mentioned before,
Yeah.
is really tying that piece in. And so it's worked really well to be able to try to tie that into the investability side of it as well. So,
Mhm.
as you're kind of going through this, we're still navigating. We're 2 properties into a 5 property
Mhm.
portfolio is the goal, right? So we're not stopping anytime soon. What
Right.
are you're learning lessons along the way. You're learning
Mhm.
things we always do, the things that we would do different, some of the challenges that we
Mhm.
came across. What are some of those that we could share? I always like to end these episodes with, like, if you could go
Mhm.
back to the beginning of your journey and give yourself some of that advice. What are some of those things that we wish we would do different or that we knew going into it?
Well, maybe I guess the way to frame this for us is like, what are we looking for in our third property that because we've learned something from property one and property two,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that we're looking for is it's a long way to get to Colorado from Texas, right? And so having something that maybe is a little bit closer, like the Fredericksburg,
Yeah.
is potentially one of the things. So my husband is he's an engineer. He likes to do things himself. He can do pretty much anything, right?
Yeah.
But he likes to do it because knows it's being done right and all of that. And so, but that creates an issue when your property is 12 hours away, right? And so, kind of managing some of the distance and trying to help him let go a little
Yeah.
bit and let
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
else do a few of these things as we because you can only do so much when you're one person, right?
Yeah.
So kind of that distance is one of the things that we're looking to do differently than our first two, um, and um, and then I think, there's just a lot that, as we are looking at places that, kind of analyzing to death can really get to
Yeah.
us. We're probably huge overthinkers, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a place where we're still wrestling
Yeah.
is like we can analyze forever
Mhm.
and we know we have to make a move to do something if we're ever going to do anything, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
that's and that's another place where I think it's been great. We can send some analytics on a property to y'all, and you can give us some thoughts on that, and that really kind of helps to push the needle over the edge there. So yeah, I think it's one of those where it's uh, those may not be the same kinds of issues that other folks have, but those are the things that for us are some of the struggles as we're looking for the
I
property
love
one.
it, and it's perfect. It's a great. I haven't had an answer like that before, and I love it because we're all navigating things, for our own personal portfolio, our own personal strengths and weaknesses, and the things that we have going for us, things we don't have going for us, and you're recognizing that those things are important. It's like, when Malcolm says, "Hey, listen, I gotta look over the shoulder of somebody that's 15 hours away." It's harder to do than looking over the shoulder or saying, "Am I okay letting go?" Right? I'm building a pole barn in my backyard, and my brother's my general contractor, and every time somebody is building a pole barn anywhere near me, he's looking at it, he's like, "See, they're not using 6x6s. They're screwing 2x6s together. I'd never do that." And we're putting 10 times more concrete in the footings than anybody else ever has done in the history of pole barns, according to Casey. And it's like, I feel like when you're saying that, like, I feel like he's like, everything's overbuilt, everything's overdone. And I'm like, so I get that. So it's understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, and being able to say, "Hey, listen, I understand what they are, and I want to be aware of that as I select my next market property, everything else." But then also recognizing that And this goes back to picking areas that you would love to own a home in, that you would love to visit, is because there's not a perfect market. There's not a perfect house. And so as you're navigating property number three, it might be the location for property number three might be a little more difficult because, at first you're like, hey, let's buy the house in the mountains, because if it doesn't work out, we're still okay. We want this, the next one, we're like, well, we'll get the property in the hill country. And if it doesn't work out, we're okay. We'll supplement a vacation. We start to analyze it strictly as building a portfolio. It's harder because we don't have that, well, it's okay, right? And but you still want to enjoy those properties in that area, because there's not going to be a perfect market. There's not going to be a perfect property. Never will be, never has been, never will be. And it's going to be, it's being able to say, okay, can I stack the odds in my favor enough that this is going to work out for us, right? We want to mitigate our risk enough, stack the odds in our favor enough. Is there enough of our unfair share of business that we can go get to make this work? And being able to answer those questions and getting yeses to them is what we need to move forward. And I think I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's where a lot of people will sit and spin their wheels. And you have to say, okay, I need to at some point move forward, or we never buy property number three, or in many cases for a lot of people, property number one. Right.
Now buy property number one, get in. Yes.
Get in. Let's go. Yeah, exactly. Well, Julie, this has been a really fun conversation for me. I appreciate you letting other people listen in. I always tell people, you and I are going to have a conversation, and we're going to catch up, and I'm going to let other people listen into it. That's what these episodes are about. And so I appreciate you spending this time with me and walking through that process. I'm really excited for you guys as we continue to build the portfolio, continue to see you guys expand that portfolio, and continue to get your unfair share of business. So I appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And those of you listening, we appreciate you spending your time with us. We know how valuable it is, and it means a lot that you take your time and spend it with us on these episodes. And so if you guys got any value out of this and you think somebody else might, our goal is to help people walk into this game with their eyes wide open. So share the show. If you have more than 30 seconds, like it or review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final, most important thing I ask you at the end of every episode, pick that one thing you can do today. Start building that life you don't want to take vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website?
Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.